In part 3, we look at the major others who have created and maintained the myth of birth sex defining gender. There are three sources of societal power that create the myth. Traditionally, all people had gender roles forced upon them, especially transgenders. Boys wear blue, girls wear pink, girls have toy kitchens, and boys have action figures. So who is the first power player? Doctors. And by calling doctor assigned at birth gender by a different name, calling it sex, and by calling it by a name that we incorrectly associate with nature and objectivity, we're giving doctors enormous power. Doctors have the power of gender assignments, although subjective assignments are done by human beings and are relegated to a different truth realm than the others of us enjoy. The sex gender distinction sets up a doctor assigned at birth gender as truth with a capital T. So, trust me? I don't think so. What to say? Except that they're changing and it's got to be done faster. And the second player is the social network support system. For decades, the diagnosis of gender identity disorder was only established for individuals who had clinically significant distress and functional impairment caused by the persistent lack of alignment of birth sex and gender presentation. Very recently, though, changes are occurring which takes the transgenderism out of the disease category and into mental health and transition support. I've had a lot of this and I certainly appreciate it. While mental health professionals are still a gatekeeper, they are reaching out with better understanding and compassion. They sure do, and they're getting it better every day, the whole social network. Thank you all. The third power player is the law. And the law continues, however, to define gender to birth sex criteria. The justice system in many cases forbids and punishes personal gender identification. That's done by not allowing birth certificate changes, making life difficult to change any legal documents, having to go through courts multiple times at some expense, and also, finally, discrimination in New York against transgender people is still legal. Transgender, don't expect any legal protection in New York. The transgender descriptor makes it legal to prevent me from getting housing, education, medical care of choice, and employment. Not always, but all too often, I have my civil rights restricted. Doctors, social workers, and the law, to some degree, still see that gender reflects sex assigned at birth. Transgender people know it to be a myth, and more frequently, these professionals know it to be a myth. Gender is a cultural quasi-independent of scientific and objective sex. A person's genital configuration is sex, and the person's presentation of themselves is gender. Let's summarize. Currently, we give the medical profession far too much power to take total identity ownership of assigning gender because they look at the genitals and say that makes a genitor. But if that happens in the intersex people, it's an arbitrary call. It's even arbitrary many times amongst the transgender people. Transgender birth sex power allows transgender people to be defined by others, the medical profession, the legal profession, and the social network profession. That is just not right. It's wrong. And that inhibits my rights that others have. So what we need to do is to pass civil rights legislation in the form of gender equality legislation that would help protect so we can use our own civil rights. If we work off the premise that gender is not determined by birth sex, then we can exclude some myths about what it is by showing what it is not.